Chris, welcome to Mana You Mintu, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show here so you can spread your wisdom. For
Yeah,
those who
thanks,
don't know
Valentin.
Chris, I met him in Beijing. I'm now in Shanghai, and Chris is definitely someone who every time I speak to, there's a takeaway, even if it's not intended. He's very wise and he's attentive. So even in general conversation, I feel like he's listening and he manages to give me like a shift of a mindset, which is actually pretty good, and I always appreciate it. So yeah, welcome, Chris.
Thanks for that, Valentin. And you're right, most of the time it's not intended.
Yeah, yeah. Because usually I'll be like, let's go for a coffee, and then I'll sit with you, and I'll find myself just sharing about some, things that I'm thinking about, and then you'd like reframe it for me and just put things in perspective. So I really appreciate you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Valentin. And sometimes that's the way it happens, right? Just when it's the most casual, the little nuggets of wisdom can come out.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, so maybe Chris, do you mind just giving a little what you do in a nutshell?
Yeah, so my name's Chris. I'm from the UK. I've been in China for the last 20 years. And currently I'm running a platform called A Toolkit for Life. And it's a web platform, and it also has a WeChat platform as well. And what it does is help spread mindfulness throughout the world and in China. And it primarily does this through training programs of mindfulness. And the one I'm doing at the moment is from Oxford Mindfulness Centre, and it's called the 8-week Mindfulness for Life program. And it's a really good structured program with a science base, and I'm teaching that a lot at the moment. I'm also giving a lot of sessions in Beijing, through different communities, so teaching mindfulness as well through that, and I'm also teaching mindfulness through corporate training as well.
Thank you for that, Chris. Cheers. Yeah, and guys, if some of you are in Beijing, please check him out. I've been to a few of Chris's sessions, and they usually just I don't know. They because what you do during the sessions is really good. It was very grounding, very you end up finding things within yourself that you didn't anticipate. So, Chris, I mean, usually, because you mentioned for people who don't know what mindfulness is, what would you say maybe other biggest misconceptions about mindfulness?
Well, I think a lot of people think that mindfulness is just when you sit down. Perhaps even before that, a lot of people I've spoken to, they haven't even heard of the term mindfulness before. Perhaps they've heard of the term meditation, which I think they're both, very connected. So a lot of people don't know what mindfulness is. But if you don't know what mindfulness is, perhaps you know what meditation is. And meditation is where you have these practices where you sit down and you contemplate. And the contemplation helps you come back to the present moment. And the reason why that's so useful is because often, especially in our modern day life, our minds are not in the present moment. We're often thinking about the future or worrying about things that have happened in the past. And so mindfulness can be really useful, or mindfulness practice can be very useful in helping your mind come back to the present moment. And this helps reduce things like stress and worry, and helps you to calm down your system, your nervous system.
It's a great answer. Yeah, I like that. So you mentioned something that's quite interesting in that you said you contemplate. What exactly are people expecting to contemplate? During the mindfulness session. If I was to ask you, what were I contemplating about?
Yeah, so this is one of the other misconceptions, is that a lot of people think that it's a passive kind of activity where you just sit down and you just relax and you go, oh yeah, I'm kind of like meditating right now and this is it. But mindfulness practice is actually an engaged or engaging practice, which means you have to actively look at things or observe things or contemplate things. And so you can observe things which are internal, like your thoughts, your emotions, the sensations in your body, or you can contemplate things which are external, like sounds and images, the things that you see. Yeah. And so this attention or contemplation helps you to attune your focus and attention. And this helps because we haven't been taught any of this stuff, I think. So a lot of the time we're not really trained in bringing our attention and consciousness to what's happening at the moment. Yeah. And so a lot of the practice is about that, contemplating certain objects of meditation.
Yeah. That's true, because I think for myself, I find it when I pay attention to what's happening now, I I feel it because there's something. Sometimes I feel this sense of losing control if I don't
Yeah.
kind of keep track of what's happening, because life is always like shifting you and pushing you about, like pushing and shoving you. So if you're not careful, you just miss the day-to-day moments. And I find that bringing my attention to the present moment, and especially after I attended one of your sessions as well, it was like that was a very like small intimate one. It was just great because I felt that was good because it gave me, it was, I feel like usually it's more like a one-on-one session, but it's not really a
Mm.
one-on-one session, but it, because you can pay more attention to the people who you're with. So I thought that was really interesting, and how you did that, because you, like, as you mentioned during the session, that how we think influences everyone else. My presence in that influenced the discussion in a certain way, right? So
Yeah.
I would say, like, what do you think people usually, because as you said, the misconception is that you just contemplate and whatever. But what, in terms of us as people, why is it important that we bring ourselves to the present moment? Do you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned it as well. That relationship with ourselves.
Mm,
Often, we actually find that quite difficult. We don't really know, how we really feel about things. A lot of people talk about finding their authentic self,
yeah,
and they look outside themselves to try and find that, by trying to do things or reaching a higher status of some kind. And so
yeah,
sometimes we can feel lost. And if we don't have that relationship with ourselves, it's really hard for us to relate authentically to other people as well.
right,
In the session you just mentioned, where we were all intimate together in that microcosm of the world that we were in, we were co-creating it. You know, if you weren't there, certain things wouldn't have arisen in a certain way. And if you had been in a different frame of mind, they would have happened in a different way as well.
that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
wow,
just by you being there and us framing a container where it was relaxed and but focused and calm, we tapped into ourselves and we spoke from, I don't want to say from the heart, but from somewhere within ourselves,
yeah,
rather than from just our minds and what we thought we should say. We said what we wanted to say, and I think that can make a big difference in terms of the way we communicate with each other. And I think so that why is it important is because I think if you look at a lot of the communications that we have in our day-to-day lives and in the world, you would probably see that a lot of them aren't that authentic. They're not coming from within. They're coming from what we can get, or what we're conceptualizing about what we should do. And then when we're all doing it, me too. And so I think it's important that if we can tap into ourselves, maybe we can reframe, the way that we communicate with each other, our relationships, and the world that we live in.
yeah. That's beautiful. So many quotables in that. I think that's really cool. So I have a question for you, Chris. Was there one moment, because it seems like you've really embodied this concept of mindfulness, and even in the way you speak is very clear that this is something that you take seriously and you live it. You not only just talk about it and then that's it. So was there one moment in your life where you remember that you became like that moment that sparked the thought that, oh, actually I want to be a mindfulness instructor? Or was it like an accumulation of things and there wasn't one moment?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's one moment actually, because I was thinking a bit about this recently, and I remember doing a survey 20 years ago. Yeah, well, no, more than 20 years ago, when I was at secondary school.
Wow.
And it's one of those, I'm not sure if you've done it before, like a career vocation. What you're meant to, what, kind of, you fill out like 150 questions, and it kind of tells you what kind of areas that you should go into, or gives you suggestions about what university course you should do.
Yeah, I don't
And I
know.
can't
It's
remember that
I
everybody's
would.
gonna. Maybe people will ask me what the name of the survey was, but I can't remember. But I remember filling it out, thinking, "Oh, this is actually quite interesting," and so I filled it out very genuinely.
Mhm.
And then it gives you a list of the kind of different careers that you can do and the courses you should do with them. And do you know what the first one that came out was at number one?
What was it?
It said spiritual leader.
Wow.
And then the second one said something like psychology, and then the third one said writer or something like this. And then the sixth one, when you go down the list, it said lawyer. Guess one which I went. Which guess which one I went for?
Let's
I went for
see.
the law. I did the law degree, because I thought that's what I should do.
Yeah.
I thought spiritual leader. You've got to be kidding.
Yeah.
And I don't see
What?
myself. By the way, I don't see myself as a spiritual leader still. But it kind of gave me gave an indication of maybe the areas that I was interested in naturally.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
and
what made you go down the list as opposed to saying, okay, let's do number one. Let's try number one, two, or three. What made you just lawyer? That's it. I'm going for it.
because I guess when you're thinking about making it in the world, that's the one that sticks out in society, where you think, oh, okay, it's kind of like a guarantee. You think it's going to be a guarantee, and so you do it. Yeah, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with law at all, and I did it, and I got into it, and it was fine. I did some training as a lawyer as well, but it wasn't the thing that was my natural best at, and I could feel that. But I didn't know why, of course, because I wasn't, very focused, I guess, at that time. I was more focused on, oh, this is the way that thing that I should do in order to make a living in the world. And so your question about, when did you know, or, I should be on the path that I am? Perhaps in one sense, I always did know, but I ignored it because I really wasn't looking inside.
Right.
Coming back to that theme of looking inside, I was looking externally for ways that I thought the world wanted me to be, rather than feeling inside what I really wanted to be. And so that made me, at 20 years ago or so, feel quite lost. I was building a career, but at the same time, I didn't feel quite, right. I felt stressed and worried, and so I started to find, ways to relieve that stress. And so the way I found was through things like meditation, and that was just by going through a bookshop and just, when you look at the books and things that call out to you, and I probably wasn't even conscious of that much. I just thought, oh, this would be an interesting read, and then I started to practice mindfulness more and more. And then over the last 20 years, I've just been collecting bits of information about how meditation and mindfulness could help me to relieve stress. And meditation almost helped me straight away, in terms of, oh yeah, making me feel a bit more relaxed and being able to tackle the world. But I don't think I really wanted to teach it or, do it more formally until I'd got some more insights. And something which was a bit annoying was that maybe 5 years ago, I came across the Oxford Mindfulness Centre, which is the place which has this course, the 8-week course. And when I came across this course, I looked at the course and I thought, oh my God, this is the stuff that I've been doing over the last 15 years. But it structured it in a way which made it very much clearer. And I thought, because on that path for 15 years, I was very proud of myself for the insights I was getting, about looking more internally, looking at my internal experience, understanding about impermanence and all this stuff, starting to get that sense. But then I saw the Oxford Mindfulness course and I thought, oh my gosh, this has been around for 20 years. If only I'd found this 20 years ago. Sorry, 15 years ago at that time. And so at that point, when I saw that course, I thought, wow, it's so well structured. I think it might be a good thing to teach, because if people can learn in 8 weeks the kind of stuff that it took me 15 years to learn, then I think that would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. No, I think it's a great course as well. But as you're talking, I was thinking about myself as well, because I also did law as opposed to doing, because initially I wanted to do psychology, but upon speaking with my godmother, we realized that okay, maybe there might not be many jobs afterwards. So,
Yeah.
but with law, there's a chance. It's competitive, but there's a chance that you you get a job. So I did the same thing, and yeah, I also didn't enjoy it. So I didn't feel like you just said, you explained it so eloquently. Like it doesn't feel like myself. I had an ex-girlfriend at the time. She used to tell me, "You're not a typical lawyer." I was like, "Thank you for that." But yeah, I completely agree with you on the
Yeah.
notion of being or wanting to be someone in the world and thinking that if you do things like law and stuff like that, you can only be recognized and respected only if you do those things, right? But which is completely wrong, as we know
Yeah.
now. Um, but yeah, so I mean, w- now,
But there's actually another interesting point about that I realized a bit later on about the law. It
yeah,
wasn't really the law that wasn't right for me.
okay,
It was the
interesting.
it was the it was the way that I thought about the law.
Ah,
Do you see what I mean? The way that I interpreted the situation.
okay, explain, elaborate, please.
So we have this category of law, but there's many ways to tackle law, and to approach it, from different points of view, right?
Right,
And it was probably my thinking of, oh, this is not right for me. That was probably one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy it that much. It was
right.
a circular thing to a certain extent. There's no. I wonder if there's. I'm pretty sure there's no reason why you can't be a spiritual lawyer.
Oh, see, this is
Or
this
you
is
think
what
that's
I
not
mean.
you think that's not you don't think that's doable? I don't
No,
know. It'd
but
be a good thing to test.
yeah, no, but this is what I
I,
mean because you always manage to shift my perspective because I never looked at it like that. But then, spiritual lawyer, what will you be? What area would you be practicing in? Spirituality or?
I don't mean in just in terms of the field, but I'm in terms of the interpretation of the position and your role in that industry. Yeah. The thing is, a lot of these categories, it helps us very much conceptualize these roles in our society
Yeah,
and the actual roles themselves. But actually, when I thought about it, it's something that I actually bought into as well,
right.
if you see what I mean. But as you know, law has many areas within it,
Yes.
and many ways that an individual, I think, an individual could express themselves within that field as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah. So you're saying maybe bringing some spirituality into the role, like into the whatever field you're in, but bringing in some spirituality, like to in how you deliver or engage or execute the role.
I'm saying if I was just more conscious of what I felt inside, that I was thinking, oh, this is not for me, maybe my relationship to the law would have changed as well. So I'm not
But
saying,
we,
what I'm saying is, well, often
yeah,
we say it's that. That's
yeah,
why I'm not feeling good. It's the law that's not making me feel good and it doesn't fit with me. But actually, it was that thought of it not fitting with me that probably
yeah.
might have made it not fit with me. Do you see what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think that's
Understood.
one thing that, sorry, and I think that's one thing that mindfulness actually might, that helps us learn a bit, because it helps us see that perhaps our interpretations of what we're doing influence, you know,
Yeah,
our experience of it.
right.
Anyway, that was just a thought that I had. I thought
Yeah.
I'd pop in there.
No, it's a great thought. I agree with it. But my question to that is it how you thought or how you felt? Because sometimes we can feel something subconsciously, and then that will affect our thoughts, right? And the way we see things. So do you think maybe is it the way we've thought about it, or did you feel it internally that this might not be for me? So
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think one thing we learn through practice is that, the thought can or does influence the way we feel about something.
yeah,
Yeah, which is my point as well about this the fields that we choose and the roles that we choose in our life.
yeah,
It's often our interpretation of them that can help us, which guide us to the experience that we have about that experience.
yeah, true. Wow, great stuff, Chris. Great stuff. So okay, now if I could maybe switch more into the male perspective, because of course you're a male mindfulness instructor, and this is a men's
Yeah.
podcast, so I would love to maybe dive deeper into that, if I may. So My question into the shift would be, what do you have you noticed subtle differences between men and women in your role as an instructor? Are there any noticeable differences there, do you think?
Yeah, I think before answering that question, I think that this sense of male and female is also a concept that we hold in ourselves as well.
Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, so and so our interpretation of what that means to be a man influences our experience of being a man as well. If we follow it through that kind of logic, and so to a certain extent, it that influences our response to things like mindfulness as well. Like how should a man respond to mindfulness, for example?
Right.
Those types of questions. In terms of the difference between the people I practice with, between men and women, it's mostly been women that have been attending my sessions, and I don't exactly know why. It's something I've pondered for a while. I've looked at the research as well. There's some preliminary research in this area, but there's nothing in depth, which is really surprising. Neither for yoga or for things like mindfulness. There's some speculation about why women might be attending these types of session more than men, but there's nothing really concrete. And from the sessions, the men that have attended my sessions and the women that have attended my sessions, I don't think there's a big enough sample size to really say, oh, there's a big difference in the way that the two sexes behave towards the sessional mindfulness itself. So unfortunately, I don't really have a concrete answer for that. The concrete answer is that it's not very clear, unfortunately, at the moment. Yeah, and the research shows that too. Yeah.
Sure. No, I completely get that. That's a bit of an unfair question to put on you because, it requires a large sample and years of research. So I completely understand that. But, I was just kind of, the reason why I asked that is because I do agree that maybe most men might not be inclined to attend things like that. For example, as you've seen, the events I used to host, they were at a Visha space, which is a space for yoga, meditation. It was a very Zen den type vibe. So,
Yeah.
and I felt sometimes it would be quite difficult to get men to come over there, because it was when they did attend the events, it was amazing because, they were open and stuff. But it was, I guess maybe with men, they'll be more inclined to go to the bar or like go to the pub and have a drink and then talk, or maybe go for a hike or go like do something active, right? So
Yeah.
it's difficult. But then, like you said, it's speculation. We don't know. There's not enough research in terms of that those differences there.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about some of the stereotypes, when I was thinking about this as well. I mean, perhaps we think, okay, men are less vulnerable, less willing to express vulnerability
Right.
than women. It might be one of the reasons. But from what I've seen, I don't have enough evidence for that. From what I've seen, I've seen men who are just as vulnerable as women in session.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's why I say it's really hard to say right now whether there is a difference. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, no, me too, actually, because I was reading an article recently which said with men, it's the reason why most men are considered maybe not vulnerable because we don't see the value in sitting down and talking about our feelings. We would rather feel more competent as opposed to, just sitting down and talking about it because even if you talk about it, the problem still exists, right? Whereas
Yeah.
for maybe women, they would rather come home, open a bottle of wine and just have a chat. Then they'll feel a little bit better because they let some stuff out. But for men, maybe that's always not the case, according to the article, which I sort of also agree with a little bit because when you do talk about it, the problem's still there. It exists. So possibly, maybe men don't see any value in attending those mindfulness events because all you do is just talk, right? You don't actually solve the problem. Maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there, but I think so. I think that's the issue anyway.
Yeah.
So, Okay, so maybe if another question then, from your perspective, since you are an instructor, maybe
Yeah.
that the first one was not very good. This one,
No,
how
it's good.
what do
Fine.
you think is important to have mindfulness as a man, like that we practice it? Why do you think there's an importance for that?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that first kind of remark that I kind of made about what's our actual concept of being a man.
Mm,
And there's this whole spectrum of gender that people are discussing nowadays. Um, but a lot of the our perspectives of being a man is from society, I guess. And the kind of images that we hold of what being a man is. And I think mindfulness can help in terms of helping us to observe that and see what we're actually thinking about ourselves and how we should be responding or reacting, no, responding in certain contexts. And a lot of the time, I don't think we are very much conscious of how we're responding and to what kind of conceptions of ourselves. So perhaps there is, something that we've seen or that we've learned in the past, which we hold up to be something that we should strive for in terms of being male. Maybe perhaps being, just a stereotype, being very strong or very muscular, or very super intelligent. I don't know what it is. Being the breadwinner in the family. All these concepts that we have. And yeah, some of these are quite obvious to us, I think, but often some of these are not that obvious to us in the way that they affect our behavior. And so mindfulness kind of helps in terms of really looking at that and looking at these concepts that we hold of ourselves, and gives us that space to start questioning it. Is that really true? Is that really what I feel authentically within myself? Is that what keeps me calm? Are certain reactions that I have the ones that I really want to have? Yeah. And so mindfulness kind of helps us with that, looking a bit more deeply inside, and the different perspectives that we have on who we should be.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because yeah, thinking about it, like, do I really want a six pack? I don't know, Chris. Actually, I do want one. I'm not gonna lie. You know, but no, that's a great question. Sorry, that's a great answer about society and how we've been like. I think how we've been taught or what's been shoved down our throats as to what is a man. This is a man. So again,
Yeah.
it's I guess the importance is like that you're emphasizing here is that you figure out yourself, right? And that you know what kind of person or what kind of man you wish to be, and how you want to present yourself. Am I kind of in the ballpark there? Or,
Yeah, I guess so. I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of the stuff that we take on unconsciously, we just accept, from around us, society, if you like. We have a general word for the stuff around us.
yeah,
And we don't really, we don't really choose, the person that we want to become, you know. And I think the more mindful that you are, the more possibility there is that you can choose certain paths. Perhaps you want a six pack. That's fine, absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with having a six pack. You look strong. You look more sexually attractive. So I've heard. So, and that might be that, and that's absolutely fine. If you want to be more sexually attractive, that's absolutely fine.
true.
So, but the question is, where did you choose that, or just like my law, did I think that somebody else chose that for me?
Yeah,
And the thing is, at the center of this is always our interpretation or our observation of what we're experiencing. And I think that's what mindfulness is kind of pointing at. We actually can observe these things if we want to, and we can train ourselves to observe these things if we want to.
yeah, true. That's so like because yeah, we sometimes we go through life just making decisions, not realizing that we're just not they're not aligned with who we are. And so in terms of talking about who we are, because we need to learn that from a young age, and that needs to be instilled in us, isn't it? So I would like to ask what, because I know you're a father, and
Yeah.
so I would like to know what, how is this mindfulness contributing to your role as a father, and how are you to sort of instilling that into your children?
I think it helps you become a bit more patient. Kids work on a different kind of like wavelength to adults. If they're faster, they're running around everywhere. You know, they take up a lot of energy. So it's good practice in many ways. Um, yeah, I think the most annoyed I've been recently is probably with my kids. And so, but you know, the mindfulness helps me to resource myself. You know, in certain situations, and helps me to respond to them as well a bit more patiently than perhaps I would do if I didn't practice mindfulness.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, no, I agree. Children do require patience because I come since coming to China, running away from law, I I became a teacher here in China for the past 3 years, slightly shifting away from it now, but I do absolutely like violently agree. Children require a level of patience that is not that we don't usually cultivate in ourselves because like you said it's just like running around like too much energy. It's like, why are you shouting right now? It's like, calm down.
Yeah.
So okay, is there, for example, this just popped into my mind now, and as you were
Yeah.
talking, because in terms of parenthood and everything, do you think there's like, because as like the boys don't cry concept, and the how men are, what role we bring to the table as men, so as opposed to what like the, because women are more nurturing in the relation in like the family dynamic, so they need to be like the nurturing sort of uh person in that dynamic. So for you, what role, since because I feel usually patience and all these things are not usually associated with masculinity, are they? I mean, like there's, like, if we're talking about in terms of what's more popular, which is like, you need to be an alpha, you need to dominate, blah 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 blah. Children, like as a man, you need to be really hard on the children. The mother's role is to be soft, and the father's role is to be so. And you mentioned patience, and I know patience is one of the skills that are very, like, it's like a soft way of approaching things. So what would you say to that in terms of patience and masculinity and all of that? Do you think is a those are traits that only should be exhibited by mothers, or is it both, or what's your take on that?
I don't know. I think patience has been demonstrated in quite a few male kind of role models in the past as well. Um, you know, you always get the. I don't know, I'm trying to stay away from stereotypes, but you know, think which is perhaps difficult. But
Yeah,
I'm thinking about people like Marcus Aurelius and you know the Stoic philosophers and people like
right.
this.
Hmm.
You know, who very much in their teachings or their meditations um, teach about patience and cultivating patience as well.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think a lot of the philosophers who are also male as well talk about this too. You
Hmm.
know, about cultivation and instilling patience. Um, and it just comes back to the point as well about okay, exactly is our concept of a male? You know, and some of the stuff is quite stereotypical. You know, strong person, willing to fight and lead the pack and be an alpha. But I think if we just look very closely in our society, you know, there's a whole range of different types of male that we can see, um, and that are succeeding as well. You know, yeah.
So what sort of what do you say to your son?
Daughters.
So you only have daughters, yeah?
Yeah, I got two daughters.
That was an assumption I should have asked. Yeah, so that's interesting then. Because previously I assumed you had son. That's wrong. So, in terms of dealing with daughters and stuff like that, are you sort of are you showing them what or telling them what a man should be, or are you sort of maybe waiting until at a later stage when they're more mature to have those sort of discussions? What do you think?
You mean telling my daughters about what how males should respond to them or in
Yeah.
relationship to them?
Yeah, just the whole dynamic because I found some parents at a young like for children at a young age they start drilling these things from a very young age, right? Some parents leave
Yeah.
it later on to like oh no they're not ready or leave it until maybe 16 or 17 or like older or something, but to have those conversations. I mean, so what's the dynamic? Are you already uh, sort of instilling those?
No, well, me and my wife haven't really done it that way, in terms of different gender kind of perspectives. I mean, our approach is very much just to make the girls as strong as possible in their own minds. That's it. They'll the world is changing, and all these perceptions of roles and all these things are going to change as well, I'm sure. And so the thing I think we can do is just guide them to themselves, that they can be strong independently, and that they can make their own decisions regarding relationships, with whoever they have relationships with. So hopefully making them a bit stronger in mind, perhaps through mindfulness, but allowing them that strength to hopefully make their own, to make their own decisions.
Yeah. Also, just trying to get them to be the best version of themselves as much as possible.
Like anybody, male or female, I think that's kind of like the thing that we should be all striving for. That we know ourselves. Regardless of whether dad tells you something or society tells you something, that within your heart that what this is the path that you want to take. That's going to be the strongest path. It's going to be the genuine path, I think, and that's the best path, right? The one that's in your heart.
Yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah, I mean, leaving a job in law to come here to China, everybody was against it. Everyone's like, "Why you? What about your law career? Are you mad? What's in China?" So, but I knew within my heart that that wasn't right for me, and coming here would serve better for my life, and it has. I've discovered that becoming a life coach, for example, is something I really do enjoy because I feel I've always been that person who listens to their friends and who shows like a caring sort of shoulder to cry on and stuff like that, and awesome. So I thought to myself, like as soon as I discovered life coaching, like why not get paid for it? Why not train and get paid for that as well? Because it's something I love to do. But
Yeah.
previously you mentioned Marcus Aurelius, Stoic. So I'm kind of tempted to ask you, what sort of are there any books that people might look into that would help with cultivating a more mindful state of mind?
There's quite a few.
Or actually, wait, let me rephrase. How about
Okay.
this?
I'm just trying to
What's
go through
the
my catalog there.
yeah?
Going from my Kindle catalog, going, oh god, that's all of my books.
Okay, so how about this? Is there the top three books that have had an impact in your life?
Oh, that's quite a tough question as well, actually. You mean mindfulness books, right?
Yes, that you that really impacted your journey on this mindfulness journey that you're on. Top three, you'd say.
I'd say, okay, the first one I read was called The Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau, and it talks about his life as a businessman, and then he goes into a Zen monastery, and it talks about all the practices of Zen practice in there, and that's kind of like the first one that kind of attracted me to mindfulness practice. So I think that's a pretty good read. Thich Nhat Hanh, The Miracle of Mindfulness. It's a short book, and it has some practices in the back. But the cool thing is the first part, where he's talking really about his experience with his friend and their conversations around mindfulness. And so that's a nice entry kind of level kind of book into mindfulness. And then the third one, oh, this is difficult, because I'm tempted to pick one that I've read recently. And it's one that's actually quite, maybe I should make the one that it's not that technical, and it's called Into the Magic Shop by James Doty, and he's like a neurosurgeon. And it talks about how this lady taught him some mindfulness techniques when he was young in a magic shop. Her son owned a magic shop. He went to the magic shop to pick up some tricks that he'd lost, and the lady strikes up a friendship with him and starts teaching him mindfulness practice. And he comes from a poor background, so he wasn't set up for success. But it talks about how his journey through mindfulness and how mindfulness helped him become a really good neurosurgeon, and a well-known one at that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there any nuggets there on how he did that you are willing to share with us?
Yeah, again, about focusing attention and the things that we've been talking about, cultivating patience, doing things step by step. And the other thing about being compassionate to yourself, especially when you come off the road. Because, we might practice mindfulness, but, we're going to not do it very well sometimes, or not do it at all. And it talks about, he has a part in the book where he's arrogant. He becomes arrogant because he becomes a very successful and rich neurosurgeon. And then he starts remembering the lessons that the lady taught him. And it starts helping him come back to the path, to the mindful path. Yeah.
Wow.
So it talks about his journey in there.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. No, I love the compassionate to yourself one, because I found that that's the most that's been really helpful in my life, because I used to get so critical of myself, and I wouldn't give myself a break when I didn't do things right, or I would think, oh, I'm behind in life because I haven't done this or I haven't done that. But yeah, self-compassion really helped me sort of just accept myself, be like, it's okay that I am where I am. I just need to work from where I build from the ground up from here, start from here. And it also kind of comes back to the point of arrogance as well, because sometimes, you get a little bit of success, you think you're all that, so you tend to forget, and you tend to treat people in a certain way that's like, oh, now I'm better than you, right? But it's a little bit of success, and it goes to people's heads. So for me, that's been really, really helpful. Now, cheers for that, Chris. I mean, I'm sure you've already said, but what practices would you give to people if they wanted to practice without, maybe for the people who are not in Beijing, or maybe not able to attend your mindful sunsets? So what would you tell them?
The one I like teaching the most is actually something called the 3-step breathing space. And I like that because it kind of gives you a landscape of mindfulness practice in one practice, which can be done very, very quickly. And the first step is all about recognizing what's happening inside, your thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. And then the second step is where you gather your focus around your breathing. So just beginning to focus on each breath coming in and out. And then the third step is where you just broaden out your awareness to the sensations of breathing throughout your whole body. So you get this sense of open awareness throughout your whole body. And so that's one of the ones I really like to teach, because it holds many of the different perspectives and experiences of mindfulness practice. Yeah. And the different things that we can see.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But one of the sorry, I was just going to say, one of the simplest things that we can do is just take one part of each of those parts, those steps. Or if that's difficult to remember as well, just focusing on the breath sometimes. Just the first thing actually is just to stop. Sometimes we're so busy and we're worried. Just taking a few moments to yourself, just stop. And if you can, and if you remember, just bringing your attention to your breathing. can be very helpful.
Yeah, as you said it right now, I started paying attention to my breathing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's definitely helpful. You sort of be ground, like it's almost as if you come to yourself, and it's that statement took me a while to understand what it meant, but yeah, it is really nice when you sort of wake up and realize, oh, wait, I'm sat down, I am here, right? If there's some stuff going on around you, look. But anyway, Chris, thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time. I know you're a busy person, so I won't take up too much of your time. I think
It's
the
been really
last
lovely
question,
chatting. Oh, so go on. Go on, Valentin.
that's all right. No, I was just gonna say, just the last thing was, or second of last thing was this: if what would you say for someone who's challenging, who finds challenges in bringing themselves to a mindful space, and who is struggling, or like, is there any something you can tell them, or some encouraging words, maybe?
Um, yeah, just keep um, doing it bit by bit. Start small, you know. At the beginning, when I started mindfulness practice, I found it very hard to just do 1 minute sitting and observing my breath. And so just starting small and just taking a little bit of time for yourself can make a difference. And it is a practice. You'll get stronger at it the more you do. Yeah. And yeah, just sit down and do it. You know, you'll get a load of benefit from it. Yeah. The practice is its own reward.
Well, the practice is its own reward. Nice. That's great, Chris. So did you hear that, guys? Stop and practice. Okay.
It's
Well,
as
the last
simple as
question
that.
was, sorry. Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Simple as that. So last question
And
was,
maybe actually the other thing to mention there is, you know, just you mentioned it just now, is just be kind to yourself. You know, a lot of people see mindfulness practice as like something else they do, like almost competitive. Oh, I've got to do, and that's how I did it at the beginning as well. You know, I've got to do really well. I've got to do 5 minutes. Got to do 10 minutes. But and then when we don't do it, like, oh, you know, people often think, oh no, I've got a thought. That means I've done it wrong. There's no real doing it wrong in mindfulness. It's just the observation, the practice of observation, observing what's there. And if you do have a thought that, you know, that your mind runs away, when you do notice, as you just did just now, as you said, just be compassionate and kind to yourself. That's the other massive part of the practice. That's the other misconception, perhaps. A lot of people think that it's just about paying attention and just focus. But no, the other side is about the attitude that we bring to it. Curiosity, self-compassion, and kindness, especially to ourselves.
right. So, okay. Because I've spoke to people as well who have been like, oh, I can't meditate or whatever because my brain is like I'm thinking so many thoughts. So would you say the goal is not to stop thinking then?
No, the goal is to build a relationship with yourself, you know, and those thoughts that you're having, the ones that you think that you can't stop, you know, the messy head that you've got right now, thousands of thoughts. What's your relation to those thoughts right now? Is there a relationship, or are you just in the thoughts? Can you step outside of them and relate to them in a slightly different way?
Right. So it's not about quieting the monkey mind. It's about gaining a relationship and building a relationship with the monkey. Is all you're saying?
If you look at those thoughts, they're probably trying to tell you something. Those thousand of thoughts, they're in there, and there's 1,000 of them in there for a certain reason, right? What happens, like, okay, let's go back to a kid. When a kid, you know, is tugging at your shirt, you know, wants your attention, you ignore it. You ignore you ignore the child.
Right.
What happens to the child?
We get distressed, start crying.
Yeah, they shout out even more for your attention, the more you ignore it.
Uh-huh.
But what happens when you turn towards the child and speak to it and relate to the child and really listen to what the child is saying? What happens?
Yeah. They calm down, right? They
Yeah.
express themselves.
And it's the same with the experiences that you have as well within yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, and the sensations in your body. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So instead of trying to get rid of them, figure out what they're trying to tell us, basically.
Yeah, listen to them. Oh, I am having thousands of thoughts in my head right now. What are those thoughts? And if you can, just observing them. That's the practice.
Wow. It's so simple. It's so simple, right?
It is, but it is difficult at the same time.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say, because it sounds simple, and when you're telling me right now, I'm like, well, this is quite standard stuff. But then, yeah, I'm not sure if you've already answered, but why do people struggle with that, do you think?
Because it's easy for us to get distracted by other things that we think we need. You know, could be lots of things: entertainment, pursuing certain things. We always think that what we need is not where we are right now,
Right.
and perhaps not even within us. We're thinking about how we make it in terms of careers and earning things. And so it leads us away from ourselves and into our thoughts more rather than what we feel.
So the promise of the future, or the grass is greener on the other side, that we're always looking over instead of just focusing on it
Yeah,
now.
I think there's perhaps that feeling that I'll be happy when I've done something, or I've made it in this kind of sense, somewhere. When I've got a certain title, or where I've got a certain amount of money in the bank account. Yeah. So perhaps that leads us away from the present moment experience that we can be having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of talks about the self-worth. Like, most men attach their worth the in their achievements and success. Is okay, so I mean, I know this is also another unfair question, but how can one person who attaches their worth to their successes and achievements begin to separate and, not identify with that so much?
Well, I think the observation of that process, and just being very honest with yourself. There's actually nothing wrong with pursuing money. I think it can be done mindfully as well. But do we know that we're doing it? Are we fully involved in what we're doing in the present moment? Is it really what's making us happy? These types of honest conversation that we could be having with ourselves when we observe more deeply inside. And that's what it is, isn't it? Just having that honesty to look at it. What is really making me, what is making me happy? What kind of experience?
Yeah. Kind of goes back to the neurosurgeon or neuroscientist that you mentioned, because it's almost as if, his achievements were getting him arrogant and cocky, but
Yeah,
when
exactly.
once he detached from his sort of, his achievements, that kind of gave him a humility. And
Yeah, exactly. When he lost that connection with his present-minded consciousness of what he was actually doing, he began to think he was great just because he was great, not because of the years of work that he'd put into his practice of neurosurgery. He began to have a concept of himself, which was detached from the actual work that he'd put into what he was doing, into the process.
wow.
And so that led him into a more challenging experience.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll definitely be checking that book out. It sounds really good. Sounds really good. But no, thank you so much, Chris, for your time today. So before I go, where can people find you? Do you have any platform so people are not in China, or people are back home in the UK?
Yeah, so I've got a few platforms. One of them is called toolkitforlife.com. So it's a website. And I also have a WeChat authorized account, I think it's called, and it's called ATKFL, for A Toolkit for Life. So if you search that, you'll find it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Chris. I'm part of Chris's A Toolkit for Life group on WeChat. And yeah, he posts some really, really wise quotes on there, guys. If you're in China, get at me. I'll add you to the group, or try and I'll connect you with Chris here. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, guys. If you've made it this far, and yeah, thank you so much for your time. And if you enjoyed this, please share it with someone who might find it useful. And Chris, thank you once again for your time, sir. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Valentin. Yeah. Have a lovely day. Okay.
Yeah, you too, Chris. Bye.